Hello and welcome to this second and final first look exploring session looking at Histriomastix, or the player whipped by some people. Probably plural, though opinions as to who they are may vary depending on your point of view. We've sort of got a sense of where this text is going. It's not a long play, we're only doing 2 sessions on it. It's doing sort of morality play kind of things. It's also doing sort of studenty things. It was a bit discombobulating last session. Hopefully now that we've clicked into it, we're going to get a little more out of it this time. We shall see. It's very fleet of foot. We don't tend to linger with the characters or get inside their heads. They're sort of reacting each time to a changing set of given circumstances each act. And there are 6 acts in total. We're about to start Act 4. We're just going to recap a little bit at the end of Act 3. And then run each of those 3 acts remaining to conclude. It's got, in theory, a cast of thousands, but we think the fun is probably in how extreme you can make the doubling. But reading today, Perpetuana, Chrisoganus, Captain Famine, and Hostess is...
Briony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
Reading Officer, Second Mechanical, Lyon-rash, Poverty, Second Countryman, and Sailor is...
Hi everyone, I'm Cheynne. I'm a grad student from Cal State Long Beach.
Reading Post-Haste and Freitas is...
Hi, I'm Simon Nader, actor and director based in Dublin.
Reading Envy, Velure, Ingle, Ambition, Third Mechanical, and Sickness is...
Hello, I'm Lois Potter, retired academic in murky London.
Reading Gulch, War, First Mechanical, Soldiers, Filisella, and a Constable is...
Alan, a civilian in Suffolk.
Reading Voucher, Gut, Horror, Larius, Sluttishness, and First Countryman is...
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Champerty, Clowt, Fury, Hiletus, Fourth Mechanical, and Bondage is...
Lynn Freitas, college composition teacher on the West Coast of the United States.
And reading Bellula, Belch, Ruin, Philarchus, Fourcher, and Peace is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
And I'm your host, Robert Crichton. I'll be reading stage directions and leaping in if I've mucked up the doubling, which is always very, very possible. So, without further ado, we're going to just... return us to where we were at the end of the last session, just to remind us all. The changing circumstance is different every single act. So we've gone from a state of initially peace ran the country, ran everywhere, and there was a wonderful peace time over everything in Act 1. Then we went to plenty, and plenty led everyone to pride, and pride now leads us to envy. So we're just going to recap the end of Act 3 before we go into Act 4, as envy... who's surrounded by sleeping actors. Everyone randomly fell asleep after drinking a lot of wine last time, and envy stands over them.
Down, climbing pride, to Stygian Tartaric. The breath of envy fills the empty world. Envy, whose nature is to work alone, as hating any agent but herself. Turn, turn, thou lackey to the winged time. I envy thee, and that thou art so slow, and I so swift to mischief. So now stand. Peace, plenty, pride had their competitors, but I enjoy my sovereignty alone. Now shall proud noblesse, law and merchandise, each swell at other as their veins would break. Fat ignorance and rammish barbarism shall spit and drivel in sweet learning's face, whilst he, half starved in envy of their power, shall eat his marrow and himself devour. Awake, ye brawn-fed epicures, look up, and when you think your clearest eyes to find, be all their organs struck with envy blind.
Exit envy, the rest all awake, and we begin the following act, Act 4, Scene 1, awaking various lords and peoples.
O pallid envy, how thou suck'st my blood and wastest my vital spirits. I could rave, run mad with anguish for my slight respect. Oh, where's the honour to my high-born blood? When every peasant, each plebeian sits in the throne of undeserved repute, when every peddler's French is termed Monseigneur, when broad-clothed tradesman and what lack you, sir, is wrapped in rich habiliments of silk, whilst urgent need makes princes bend their knee as servile as the ignobility to crouch for coin, while slaves tie fast our lands in statute staple, or these merchants' bands.
One ghost-like envy spongeth up my blood, whilst I behold yon half-faced minion, to the daughter of some cloves and cinnamon, to equal me in rich accoutrement. Oh, where's the outward difference of our birth, when each odd mincing mistress city dame shall dare to be as sumptuously adorned with jewels, chains, and richest ornaments, as we from whom their fathers held their land in bond slaves' tenure and base villanage?
Why should yon bubble of nobility, yon shade of man, appropriate epitaphs of noble and right honorable sir, to the blind fortune of his happy birth? Why should this reeling world, drunk with the juice of plenty's bounty, give such attribute of sovereign title, place, and dignity to that same swollen up lord, whom blinded chance above his virtue's merit doth advance to high exalted state, whilst all repine to see our sweat rewarded, and our pain guerdoned but with a single fee, an angel's gain?
God for his mercy, how yon lady jets and swoops along in Persian royalty. I could pine with envy and consume my heart in foul disdain, that she should strut and swell in ostentation of her birth, decking the curled tresses of her hair with glittering ornaments, whilst I am pent in nice respect of civil modesty. I'll not endure it. Lawyers' wives shall shine, spite of the law, and all that dare repine.
Drops of cold sweat hang on my fretting brow. Oh, I could gnash my teeth and whip myself, parboil my liver in this envious heat of deep repining malice. I am vexed, stung with a viperous impatience that yon nobility, yon Janus style, should sole possess the throne of dignity, whilst we, fat burgomeisters of the state, rich treasuries of gold, full stuffed up trunks with all the fattest marrow of the land, should be debarred from types majestical, and live like Aesop's ass, whilst our mean birth curbs our aspiring humors from the seat of honor's mounted state. I cannot sleep, my entrails burn with scorn, that merchandise should stand and lick the pavement with his knee, barehead and crouching to nobility. Though forfeited to us be all their state, yet envy still my heart doth macerate.
Gyp, mistress, madam, and French hood entailed unto a habeas corpus, Jesu God, how proud they jet it, and must I give wall, and bend my body to their mistress' ships? O husband, I am sick, my cheek is pale with
what, my sweet?
With envy, which no physic can prevent. Shall I still stand an abject in the eye of fair respect, not mounted to the height, to the top gallant of o'erpeering state, that with elated looks of majestic I may outface the proud piled eminence of this same gilded Madam Bellula, and yon same Jonanoke, chained Champerty?
Content thee, wife. The tide of royalty shall only flow unto our merchandise. The gulf of our ambition shall devour all the supports of honor, lands and plate, rich mineral, jewels, sumptuous palaces, all shall be swallowed. by the yawning mouth of hungry avarice. Thus I plotted it. You see, Mavortius' stormy brow portends tempestuous whirlwinds of tumultuous arms. Now, when the breath of war is once denounced, then troop the gallants to our wealthy shops, to take up rich apparel, pawn their land, to puff up pride's swollen bulk with plumy shows. Then, when the action's expectation flags, and fills not up the mouth of gaping hope, to us returns the malcontented youth, and for the furnishment of one suit more, all is ours. Jewels, plate, and lands all take career unto the merchant's hands. Then come, withdraw, and cool thy envious heat. My policy shall make thy hopes replete.
And exeunt Velure and Perpetuana.
And shall I still, dear Voucher, sit below, give place to madams and these city dames? Oh, how my envy at their glory flames!
Be patient but a while, sweet Champerty, and I will make the world do fealty to thy exalted state. The law shall stand, like to a waxen nose or lesbian rule, a dial gnomon or a weathercock, turned with the breath of greatness every way, on whose uncertainty our certain ground of towering height shall stand invincible. The dubious law shall nurse dissension, which being pampered with our feeding helps, will swell in greatness, and our palace towers shall prick the ribs of heaven with proud height. Then let thy envy cease, since thy high fate shall not discern a fortune more elate.
Exeunt Voucher and Champerty.
See with what slight respect they pass from us, not giving to our births their due salutes. Oh, dearest lord, shall high-born Bellula be sunk and thus obscured by the proud shine of yon sophisticate base alchemy? You bullion stuff, O noble bloods repine, that dirt usurps the orb where you should shine.
Content thee, sweet. The lightning of my arms shall purge the air of these gross foggy clouds that do obscure our birth's bright radiance. When iron Mars mounts up his plumy crest, the law and merchandise in rust may rest. Then envy cease, for ere the sun shall set, I'll buckle on Mavortius Burgonet.
Exeunt Mavortius and Bellula. Enter Chrisoganus alone.
Summa petit liver, per flunt altisara venti. Then poor Chrisoganus, who'll envy thee, whose dusky fortune hath no shining gloss that envy's breath can blast. Oh, I could curse this idiot world, this ill-nursed age of peace that fosters all save virtue, comforts all saving industrious art, the soul's bright gem, that crusheth down the sprouting stems of art, blasts forward wits with frosty cold contempt, crowning dull clods of earth with honours, wreath gilding the rotten face of barbarism with the unworthy shine of eminence. Oh, I could wish myself consumed in air when I behold these huge fat lumps of flesh, these big bulked painted posts that senseless stand to have their backs pasted with dignity, quite choking up all passage to respect, these huge colossi that run up and down and fill up all the seat of man with froth of outward semblance, whilst pale artisans pine in the shades of gloomy academes, faint in pursuit of virtue, and quite tired for want of liberal food for liberal art, give up the goal to sluggish ignorance. Oh, whither doth my passion carry me? Poor fool, leave prating, envy not their shine, who still will flourish, though great fate repine.
And exit Chrisoganus. I think everyone's quite envious Yeah, I don't know if anyone's getting this hint that that envy turned up and made everyone envious, and they're all quite envious. There's a lot of envy flowing there. Though Chrisoganus seems to be sort of resisting the envy. He's aware of the envy, and he's sort of going, no, hang on, this isn't a rational way of behaving. I don't really want these things. I'm not really envious. Oh, but maybe I am. And so that he seems to be fighting with his Jedi mind powers more, whereas everybody else is sort of luxuriating in things. So yeah, it's really indulging in all the ways of discussing envy in so many different ways. It's much more speechy than some, though these characters do tend to be a bit more speechy. So yeah, Lois and Lynn.
Yeah, as I was reading Envy's speech, I realized something about the staging. When I think, I was wondering when the first speech in the play, I think, addresses something. And I think what it is a large globe that each of the dominant figures turns, because Envy tells it something to turn and then says stop. And I think it must be something like that, whether it's a globe or some turning wheel. Maybe it's Fortune's wheel, but that would be more likely, I guess. But at any rate, each of these people, peace, plenty, pride, and envy, gets their turn at turning the thing.
Well, that gives us a set design, doesn't it? Whacking Great Wheel of Fortune. I expect game show sound effects and turn the wheel. Where's it going to stop? It's stopping at envy. Stage manager, make sure it stops in the right place. Lynn.
Yeah, just sort of responding to Lois. Yeah, well, not envy. Fortune is sometimes portrayed with a wheel, but she's sometimes portrayed on top of a ball too, right? So either one of those props would work. But what I was going to say is like, okay, we get it. Envy makes people miserable. Okay. But this little passage seems to try to want to have it both ways in terms of its social critique. People who aspire to signifiers of rank above their station, people who are arriviste, nouveau riche, they're not good. But also people who criticize those people are also not good, if you follow me. So it's kind of, it seems to be a little ambiguous what it's saying about in terms of like what is appropriate social behavior, because the people who are aspirational are bad, but the people who are critical of the people who are aspirational are bad as well.
Yeah, and we're sort of drifting into, we were talking last time about some of those sort of what this is doing socially. We're sort of drifting into that sort of area of sort of neoliberal thought about, oh well, if you envy someone, maybe you aspire to improve your, maybe it's a driver for things as well. So there's a little bit hint of that where I'm thinking that might be a rod in to play with for modern take. Lois.
Yeah, or perhaps the ideal is a society where everybody is quite happy with their station, like it's Brave New World, isn't it? Where everybody is, I'm so glad I am a B, not an A. Yeah.
Though we'd need some sort of outside place where people have a different society for that for the Brave New World one to cross over. Other thoughts? I mean, some of those individual speeches I was quite enjoying. There's some, again, every so often we just hit some really interesting turns of phrase and, prick the ribs of heaven with proud height. There's interesting little bits. There's some envy still my heart doth macerate. Rhyme with state. Yeah, nicely done there. Nicely done. Lynn.
Yeah, another thing in this that kind of grates a little is that it seems to be saying that it's the women, the wives, who kind of instigate their husbands. They're filled with envy and the men are like, it's okay, dear, I'll fix it. So
we've blamed poor people yesterday and now women.
Yeah, there's so many scapegoats available for people's poor behaviours. Other thoughts before we move on. Okay, we're not going to be with Envy for very much longer, but we're going to go to a different group to see what Envy's doing to them. For Act 4, Scene 2, enter Belch, Gulch, Gut, and Clowt with an Ingle.
Jack of the Clockhouse, where's Master Posthaste?
In my book for slow pace, 12 pence on pate for staying so late.
Prologue begin. Rehearse. Gentlemen, in this envious age, we bring Bayard for Bucephalus. If mired, bogged, draw him forth with your favors. So, promising that we never mean to perform, our prologue pieceth.
Pieces. What peaking pageanter penned that?
But Master Posthaste.
It is as dangerous to read his name at a play door as a printed bill on a plague door.
You wear the handsomest compassed hilt I've seen.
Doth this fashion like my friend so well?
So well I mean to wear it for your sake.
I can deny thee nothing if I would.
Fie, how this Ingling troubles our rehearsal. Say on.
Fellow Belch, you have found a haunt at my house. You must belch and breathe your spirits somewhere else.
Jealous of me? With your seat for Master John?
When the door is shut, the sign's in Capricorn.
Then you might heave up the latch with your horn.
This cuckoldy coil hinders our rehearsal.
I'll tear their turret tops. I'll beat their bulwarks down. I'll rend such rascals from their rags and whip them out of town.
Patience, my lord. Your fury strays too far.
Stay, sirs. Rehearse no further than you are, for here be huffing parts in this new book.
Have I e'er a good humour in my part?
Thou hast never a good one out of thy part.
I'll play the conquering king. That likes me best.
Thou play the cowardly knave. Thou dost but jest.
Half a share, half a shirt. A comedian, a whole share, or turn chameleon.
Well, sirs, the gentlemen see into our trade. We cannot gull them with brown paper stuff. And the best poets grown so envious, they'll starve rather than we get store of money.
Since dearth of poets lets not players live by wit, to spite them, let's to wars, and learn to use a spit.
Oh, excellent ill, a spit to roast a rhyme.
'Twill serve you to remember dinner time.
That's true. 'Tis time. Let's away.
And they exit. So envy's working its way. Whoever thought of actors ever being envious of one another in any way, shape, or form? I mean, that's just so implausible. I don't know what they're talking about. I've never known that.
That never happened.
No. So yeah, writers. It's just what good are they? We don't need writers. We can do our own stuff. It'll be fine. Briony, are you waving or were you not? No, hand was just in a fake. But Simon.
No, it's interesting that the writer seems to have tried to out envy himself by inventing more and more outrageous alliteration during that scene. Whether that's supposed to be the actors outdoing each other or if he just was thinking, brilliant. There was, I think, Alan had a mouthful of P words.
Yeah,
that really stood out, and then there were some others, R's as well.
the author was taking the P.
Yeah, very much so. Lynn and then Lois.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to follow what's going on here for me, but it does seem to me that these characters who were working class people turned actors are not really as angry and vicious as the middle class and the upwardly mobile people in the previous scene. They don't really seem quite as awful.
Yeah, it's really brief. There's parts of me sort of going, is there more here than we're getting? Is there something else going on here? I'm not sure. Lois.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, some of this I really don't understand. I mean, jealous of me with your seat for Master John? What on earth does that mean? You know, and then, I mean, I get the bit about when the doors shut, the signs in Capricorn and the horn. There's obviously some joke about cuckolding. I'm not sure whether the point is that Gut is cuckolding. No, Belch is cuckolding Gut, because he says, fellow Belch, you found a haunt in my house. And then there's this cuckoldy coil hinders our rehearsal. We've already had the bit about Ingling hindering their rehearsal. I mean, this sounds like the sort of personal stuff that goes on in companies during rehearsals, that if it gets too personal, does certainly hinder the rehearsal. But I don't know. It also sounds as if it's referring to something else that I certainly don't know.
And there's something maybe about the way the rhyming is sort of competitive as well, that there's a game going on there that they're doing, because they're obviously aware of each other's trying to do wordplay. It's not like it's, you know, these are characters who happen to rhyme. They are actively trying to rhyme, and it seems to be that they're trying to be witty. And that it's getting in the way of actually rehearsing the sodding play, and, you know, bandying insults about the writer, and who's getting the money. And that seems to be quite an important thing, is, you know, the poets are getting all the money. You know, what about us actors? You know, we don't need someone writing. We can write our own dialogue. We'll be fine. Seems to be the idea, but you're right. It doesn't quite hang together in terms of a coherent dialogue that sort of people talking to each other dialogue. It's sort of weird in that way. Simon.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I suddenly remembered yesterday, and how they, for people that weren't with us, they got vast sums of money thrown at them, if you remember, and now it seems to have gone to their head. And I wonder, in a way, it's like there's a missing scene to bridge in. So it's almost like they've become completely different characters to before, and perhaps there's something to do. If you were to stage it, you'd need that kind of grandiosity to them, being new costumes, and now because they're paid professional actors, they've now become completely different paid professionals. You know what I mean? It's something that's the only way I can key into maybe the change. Perhaps there's a missing scene, or if we were to stage it, something that would need to refer to that somehow. You know, they've just become like they're drunk on their own success, maybe, is the only way I can.
Yeah, you know, whereas, you know, initially they were just rehearsing in their normal clothes. Now they've all got scarves that they can fling over their shoulder, you know, and that kind of thing. And everyone's suddenly wearing, you know, turtleneck jumpers and things. You know, a certain class of
We've got Italian horses rather than, you know, just, English-made hatchbacks.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it feels like that's the outline of a scene rather than the whole scene. I'm wondering whether, with the auspices of this, whether there's more room for, you know, perhaps a bit of improvisation and play that might not have made it into the script or something. I don't know. It feels like a starting point for me. Anyway, that's it for Act 4. That was short. You know, that was whizzed past. So that's probably it for Envy, because we're going to start Act 5 now. 5-1. Enter war, ambition, fury, horror, and ruin. All the guests you really want at a party.
Rule far-eyed war, revel in blood and flames. Envy, whose breath hath poisoned all estates, hath now resigned her spiteful throne to us. Stand forth, ambition, fly throughout the land, and enter every breast of noble blood. Infect their honoured minds with factious thoughts, and make them glister in opposed arms. Let unjust force and scarlet tyranny wait on their actions till their ulcers break, or else be launched by the hand of war, which cannot be without a lasting scar.
Ambition like a pestilence doth fly to poison honour and nobility.
Exit ambition.
Fury, thy turn is next. Go now and fill the trunk of peasants with thy dangerous breath. Inspire them with the spirit of mutiny, rage and rebellion. Make them desperate. Hurry them headlong unto every ill, like dust raised with a whirlwind. Let their eyes be ever fixed on the bruised prince, made in their state by wild oppression. And, after all, possess them with this fire, that only war must purchase their desire.
Fury shall shine amongst the multitude like a bright meteor in the darkest cloud.
And exit Fury.
Horror shall greet the bosom of green youth, the melting liver of pied gallantry, the wrinkled vizard of devotion, the cheveril conscience of corrupted law, and frozen heart of gouty merchandise. Horror, wound these, strike palsies in their limbs, and as thou stalkest in thy prodigious shape, and meetest a fellow swollen with mounted place, shake him with glances of thy hollow eyes, and let thy vigour live as his heart dies.
Enough. Ere long the air shall ring with shrieks, and sad lament of those whom horror strikes.
Exit Horror.
Horror, adieu. These three are ushers to our deity. Only vast ruin here attends on us, and is a follower of our high designs. Ruin, thou faithful servant to grim war, now teach thy murdering shot to tear men's limbs, thy brazen cannons how to make a breach in a fair city's bosom. Teach thy fires to climb the tops of houses, and thy mines to blow up churches in the offended sky. Consume whole groves and standing fields of corn in thy wild rage, and make the proud earth groan under the weight of thy confusion.
This and much more shall ruin execute.
Meanwhile, we'll steep our sinewy fleet in blood, and dance into the music of the field. Trumpets for trebles, basses, bellowing drums, broils envy bred, but war shall end those brawls. Deaf war, that will not hear a word of peace. Sharp pikes shall serve for subtle lawyers' pens. The merchant silk shall turn to shining steel, instead of false yardsticks. Large horsemen's staves shall measure out true patterns of their graves.
And exeunt all remaining. So we've gone from envy, we've gone to war. War is there seems to be a much different energy entering the room here. It's feeling suddenly so much more Senecan. It's so much more playing with like bad things, blood, death, destruction. So interesting sort of play there with all of those themes, and sending ambition, fury, horror, and ruin out into the field. Steep our sinewy feet in blood. Why the feet need to be sinewy, I don't know. Rachael.
Yeah, I think like on the page, because I know in some of these old theaters they did have like cannons and things like that they could fire off. That, if you were in the theater, it's I don't know if you'd call it a mask, but you could call up on the music section to, hit the drums and do all these things and fire off cannon shot and really make it sound like that and play with it in that way. That maybe this is a sort of pause, to reset the tone of the play, but also like, somebody could get up and get a beer or use the loo or something as this is going on, and you get the gist of it because you hear all the sound cues going off in it, like horror calling up the shrieks. Maybe you have somebody behind the scenes screaming, or you could panto it and have the audience scream.
The whole thing is asking for lots of physical theatre and effects and potentially there's lots of options. With all of these sort of introduction of any supernatural figure throughout the play, is actually this is the point where you can throw some stuff at it. And it does seem to have quite a visual sense of itself. The earlier scene with Envy, everyone's asleep on the floor. We had sort of smoke cues, even though they might not be literal smoke cues from earlier, because it might be something more emblematic. It's breaking up these relatively naturalistic scenes with potential room for effects. Lynn.
So, sort of more philosophical angle. And so it looks like so we started with peace, and that devolved eventually to envy, and then envy creates hostility, which leads to war. So are we going for a kind of cyclic thing here? That eventually war, of course, burns itself out, and then we go back to peace, and the cycle starts over. And maybe Lois can help me out here. There was some guy. Yeah, I know that's very specific. But I don't remember. The problem is I don't remember when this person lived, but he had a kind of cyclic paradigm for governmental models that monarchs eventually get overthrown because they're tyrants and some form of democracy arises, but democracy doesn't function very efficiently, so it turns back into oligarchy, which turns into monarchy, and the whole cycle starts over again. No, you don't know. Okay. Well, I'm just wondering if that model had been articulated before this time, and if the author or authors of this play was thinking about that.
Yeah, well, I don't know who specifically started the cyclical theory, but it's all over the place in this play anyway. I mean, that speech of Velure's that I was reading is really partly about how the nobility are going to go broke because, and the merchants will end up with all their property, which is a very common idea. I mean, the notion of the social order being cyclical, and clearly this whole thing is assuming, the sort of cyclical pattern that you've described. I think we will probably end up with peace, and I think it is just a kind of almost inherent notion. I really no idea. I mean, I think it goes back to some classical author probably.
And yeah, I mean, at the moment it's feeling awfully pertinent. It's it's one of those things of the question of how it plays out and how you could connect this with modern events, by laying that out. I mean, it
seems to me it's remarkably close, actually.
Yeah. And those arguments are in play and being made today. So it's it doesn't in a sense matter who started the fire. It's always been burning since the world was turning. Alan, then Simon.
Yeah, I mean, the name that came to mind with what Lynn was saying was Cicero. I think it's going back to classical Rome, and the disputes around the end of the Roman Republic and the rise of Caesar.
If you know anything of this, do put something in the comments section. Throw us some links. I'm sure you out there can Google it, even if we can't be bothered. Simon.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm pretty sure it's something that would have been expounded by Machiavelli, definitely contemporaneously at this point, as part of the myriad of things we're bequeathed by Machiavelli. But obviously not the originator of the thought. But I'm certain that would have had an influence at this time.
Yeah, and Machiavelli was soaked in the classics anyway.
Oh yeah, he liked using examples when he's making his points. Yeah, I'm trying to think off the top of my head if he directly does writings on this specific theme rather than more general ones. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I think we've got the basic idea, gist of this war. What is it good for? Let's find out. Let's see. Act 5, Scene 2. Enter Belch, setting up bills. Enter to him a captain.
Sirrah, what set you up there?
Text bills for plays.
What? Plays in time of wars? Hold, Sirrah, there's a new plot.
How many mean you shall come in for this?
Player, 'tis press money.
Press money? Press money? Alas, sir, press me? I am no fit actor for the action.
Text bills must now be turned to iron bills.
Exit captain.
And please you, let them be dagger picks.
Enter an officer, post-haste Gulch, Gut and Clowt.
Sir Oliver's men, the last players took the town's reward like honest men.
Those were a couple of coney catchers, the cousin mayors, and have no consort for themselves. But we're a fiddle company, and our credit with our master known.
Meanwhile, there's press money for your reward.
Lynn.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's the Clowt spelling sometimes shifts.
No, I thank your worship. We mean not to trouble your town at this time.
Well, masters, you that are master sharers must provide you upon your purses.
Alas, sir, we players are privileged. 'Tis our audience must fight in the field for us, and we upon the stage for them.
Sir, as concerning 60 angels or such a matter for a man in my place.
Those days are out of date.
The more's the pity, sir.
Exit officer.
Well, I've a brewer to my Ingle. He'll furnish me with a horse great enough.
Faith, I'll even paste all my ballads together and make a coat to hold our pistol proof.
I marvel what use I should make of my Ingle, the hobby horse seller.
Faith, make him sell a whole troop of horse to buy thee one.
Sirs, if these soldiers light upon our playing apparel, they'll strut it in the field and flaunt it out.
Well, sirs, I have no stomach to these wars.
Faith, I've a better stomach to my breakfast.
A shrewd morning's work for players.
Let's be gone.
And they exit, presumably for breakfast. I like the idea that Post Haste has written so much stuff that it's enough to stop a bullet. Look, I must be a great writer. Look how thick my wadge of words is.
That's hilarious.
Lynn.
Just sort of a random neural firing. I noticed this yesterday, but it didn't come up. I wonder what to make of the fact that the writer's name basically means hurry, hurry. Do the people that wrote feel like they're always under pressure to produce on deadline?
Well, I think it means that he writes such trash because he is just dashing it off.
Okay.
I mean, there's another character, I think, in a Johnson play called Anthony Now, who I think is meant to be a satire on Anthony Munday. And I think Now gives the same impression, scribble, scribble, scribble rapidly.
And it wouldn't be I don't know if it's the first time, but it's certainly not the last time an actor will use a battlefield metaphor for what it's like to go out on stage. Yeah. We put on our tin hats and we went over the top. So yeah, again, these actor scenes are always really short. They come in, they do a few gags. There's a few puns on pressing press money and play bills to text bills to iron bills and. Plays in times of war and new plots come for there's there, but it doesn't linger. It just does this stuff and then goes straight back out again. Lois.
Yeah, I don't think that's a play on press money. I think he is actually trying to enlist these guys in the army. I mean, this play bills must turn to iron bills. I mean, that's why they all decide to leave. I think they're basically deserting.
Oh yeah, they're going,
yeah.
Yeah. But again, very fleet of foot. We're not lingering. Okay. Any other thoughts? No. Okay, let's go to Act 5, Scene 3 then, as we go to a different social status to see what war does to them. Enter Mavotius and Larius on one side, Philarchus and Hiletus on the other with weapons drawn. Chrisoganus between them. Ambition breathing amongst them.
Have patience, worthy lords, and calm your spirits.
Peace, prating scholar! Bid the sea be still when powerful winds do toss the raging waves, or stay the winged lightning in his course when thou dost this. Thy words shall charm me too, till then preserve thy breath.
Mavotius, darest thou maintain thy words?
How? Dare, Philarchus? Yes, I dare do more. In blood or tire, or where thou darest not come, in the numb fingers of cold death, I dare.
What are those words, or thou shalt eat my sword?
He is no estrich, sir. He loves no iron.
And yet methinks he should be by his plume.
What, are you playing with my feather too?
And they all run at one another. Chrisoganus steps between them.
Oh, stay your rages. Let not ambition captivate your blood. Make not your hates objects for vulgar eyes.
Pox upon this linguist. Take him hence. Philarchus, I defy thee, and in scorn spit on thy bosom, vowing here by heaven, if either sword or fire or strength of men or any other steel violence can bring to swift confusion what is thine, upon this grateful soil it shall be done.
And when 'tis done, I will restore my wrongs out of thy forts, thy castles, and thy lands.
My lands?
I, factious lord, till then adieu. We'll shine like comets in next interview.
Exeunt Philarchus and Hiletus.
My soul is big in travail with revenge, and I could rip her womb up with a stab to free the imprisoned issue of my thought.
Exeunt, leaving Chrisoganus.
Oh, how this vulture vile ambition tires on the heart of greatness, and devours their bleeding honours, whilst their empty names lie chained unto the hill of infamy. Now is the time wherein a melting eye may spend itself in tears, and with salt drops write woe and desolation in the dust, upon the frightened bosom of our land. Pity and piety are both exiled, religion buried with our fathers' bones in the cold earth, and nothing but her face left to adorn these gross and impious times.
And Chrisoganus stands aside. There is a noise within, crying all together now.
Liberty!
Liberty!
Enter a sort of russitings and mechanicals. Fury is leading them, and crying confusedly.
Liberty! Liberty!
Liberty!
Nay, but stay, my masters. We have not insulted yet. Who shall be our captain?
Mass, that's true. Faith, let us all be captains.
Content, so we shall be sure to have no equality amongst us.
Oh, it's best for mine own part. I scorn to have an equal.
Well then, what exploit shall we do first?
Mary, I'll tell you. Let's pluck the church instead of the alehouse.
Oh, excellent.
Excellent, excellent.
Rare exploit.
Good, this is for exploit. But then there's a thing called action.
Oh, that's going to see. That we have nothing to do with all.
No, we're all for the land, we.
Land, we'll pluck down all those noble houses in the loud error we have done.
It were a most noble service and most worthy of the chronicle.
Slid these lords are ground so proud. Nay, we'll have a fling at the lawyers too.
Oh, aye, first of all, at the lawyers. Quack, quack.
True that we may have the law in our own hands.
Oh, then we may take up what we will of the merchants.
Aye, and forfeit our bronze at pleasure. Nobody can sue us.
Oh, 'twill be rare. I wonder how much velvet will apparel me and my horse.
Talk not of that, man. We'll have enough. All shall be common.
Wives and all, what? Helter Skelter!
Slid, we are men as well as they are.
And we came all of our father Adam.
Go to then. Why should we be their slaves?
Liberty! Liberty! Liberty!
Exeunt mechanicals, leaving Chrisoganus.
See this common beast, the multitude, transported thus with fury, how it raves, threatening all states with ruin, to englut their bestial and more brutish appetites. O you auspicious and divinest powers, that in your wisdom suffer such dread plagues to flow and cover a rebellious land. Give end unto their furies, and drive back the roaring torrent on the authors' heads, that, in their pride of rage, all eyes may see justice hath whips to scourge impiety.
And exit Chrisoganus. Yeah, it's leading to all sorts of upheaval here as everyone's having a go. There's a bit of rebellion from the lower orders as well. They're coming in to do a bit of rebelling, but also in the sort of middle and higher orders, there's the sword fighting and stuff. And Chrisoganus is, as ever, sort of standing in the middle of this, going, "Oh no, oh." I must put some sort of intellectual framework onto this action that is occurring around me. If only I spoke clearer. Briony.
Are we supposed to like Chrisoganus? Because I really don't. What a
That's the
pretentious
question,
object.
isn't it?
It's a really good question. I'm not convinced we are wholeheartedly supposed. I think there's supposed to be something. I haven't minded him this half actually so much. I mean, I think he sort of functions within these scenes, but other opinions are available. Elizabeth.
I quite like Chrisoganus. I think that he's funny. I think that and I like the through line that he gives us. We need some things to kind of connect the different, almost disparate parts of the play, and he's one of them.
Yeah.
The support or downgrading of Chrisoganus. We won't take a vote. It's fine. Lois, then Rachael.
Yeah, I mean, if one did this modern version of it that I'm imagining, he could be something like the TV commentator, providing a kind of link. Now here we're seeing what happens when the mob gets going, or here we're seeing what happens when the middle classes are envious of the upper classes. It seems like that sort of thing.
See this common beast, the multitude, transported thus with fury, and it raves.
That's Frankie Howard now, please.
Rachael.
Yeah, I like what Lois has said, like a reporter or something. I was gonna ask, what is a russeting and what is a mechanical?
Workers in terms of mechanicals enter a sort of russetings. I'm not sure actually. Lois, any thoughts?
Well, they wore russet, didn't they? I mean, it's the kind of fabric I think that working class people dressed in. So I think it just means a lot of working class types, and mechanicals, people who did mechanical work.
And they're being led by fury, whereas before them, ambition is driving those who are more socially, engaged in terms of the upper strata of society. So who are more personally attacking each other, whereas these are more generally attacking and trying to grab more of the pie. Alan.
I think russeting could be rustic.
Maybe
Sorry, it's the peasants and workers united.
Yeah.
You've nothing to lose but your chains.
Other thoughts? We're still in a war footing. We've still got at least one more scene of war before the wheel turns again. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm always really concerned with pace. And I felt like at the beginning of this play, it just was moving really, really fast. And now it's slowed down a lot. And I think that it's a contrast because war, I assume, would speed things up. But in this play, it slowed things down.
Yeah, it might just be that's just the way we're reading today. Maybe we're just reading slower. I don't know.
Yes.
It could be us. It might not be the play's fault.
Might be that people are saying more. I mean, people do seem to have longer speeches in this bit.
Well, it definitely during Envy's act in Act 4, there was a lot of long speeches and it was much slower. Whereas this is a bit more. That's a technical term.
Staccato.
Yeah, that's a much better. That's an actual word. I'm just making noises. That's as far as my analytical work is going here today. Pop, pop, pop. Other thoughts? Sorry, I've lost track of who might have been waving. Cheynne.
I was just going to say, I just jumped into this play today, so it just kind of took me a little bit to kind of see what's going on. But I don't know if you guys have already discussed this in the previous sessions, but it just seems like whoever this author is or collection of authors are, that this play is sort of kind of poking fun at a lot of different things going on during that time. a lot of the uncertainty, because during this time there's just a lot of change. There's a lot of, there's just a lot of political unrest, I feel like.
Yes, and the fear of political unrest as well, because we've got an old queen here who is on the not looking good. It'll be fair to say by the time this player is turning up. So that fear of war and uncertainty, along with all the various sort of external war stuff going on around, is it's a real thing. Okay, let's find out. Let's finish off war, and before the wheel turns again, or the beach ball of fortune bounces to somewhere else. Act 5, Scene 4. Enter Lyon-rash to Fourcher, sitting in his study at one end of the stage. At the other, enter Voucher to Velure in his shop.
Good morrow, Master Fourcher.
Master Lyon-rash, you are welcome. How fare you, sir, in these prodigious times?
Troth, like a man grown wild and desperate, even spent with horror of their strange effects.
I fear they will be much more stranger yet.
And you have cause to fear, sir.
So have you, if wealth may make a man suspect his state. What news hear you, sir? Sit down, I pray you.
They sit and whisper whilst the other two speak.
I wonder how you dare keep open shop, considering the tumults are abroad. They say the nobles are all up in arms, and the rude commons and dissevered troops have gathered dangerous head, and make such spoil as would strike dead a true reporter's tongue.
Faith, I am ignorant of what course to take. We in the city here are so distracted, as if our spirits were all earth and air. I know not how. Each hour here comes fresh news, and nothing certain.
And we flip to the other side of the stage again.
Well, if this be true, the issue cannot be but dangerous.
Oh, they have made the violentest attempts, and there were heard of ruined churches, towns, burnt goodly manors, and indeed laid waste all the whole country as they pass along.
And back to the other.
There's no prevention if they want to come here, but that our city must endure the sack.
I fear it, sir.
Faith, we are sure to feel the fury of the tempest when it comes. The law and merchandise may both go beg.
Enter Champerty to her husband and Lyon-rash.
Where are you, husband? Do you hear the news?
What news? On God's name.
Oh, the enemies.
What of the enemies?
They are entered into the city.
Adieu, good Master Fourcher.
Lord, have mercy upon us.
Oh, good Master Lyon-rash, go pray.
Exeunt Fourcher, Lyon-rash, Champerty.
Oh, now, what noise is this?
They cry, arm, methinks.
Enter Perpetuana.
Oh, sweetheart, the Spaniards are come. We shall all be killed, they say. Maester Fourcher, what shall we do? Oh, Lord.
Enter a sort of fellows with armour and weapons, and cross the stage crying, arm, arm, arm.
Arm! Arm! Arm!
Exeunt soldiers. Enter a captain with soldiers, the soldiers having most of the players' apparel and bringing out the players amongst them.
Come on, players. Now we are the sharers, and you the hired men. Nay, you must take patience. Slit out, you do march. Sure, is this you would rend and tear the cat upon a stage, and now marked like a drowned rat? Look up and play the tambourine, you rogue, you!
And exeunt. Enter all the factions of noblemen, peasants, and citizens fighting. So, okay, melee, everybody on. The ruder sort drive in the rest and cry, a sack, havoc, havoc, burn the lawyers' books, tear the silks out of the shops.
Silks out of the shops.
In that confusion, the scholar escaping from amongst them, they all go out and leave him upon the stage, yes, leaving Chrisoganus alone.
Thus heaven, in spite of fury, can preserve the trustful innocent and guiltless soul. Oh, what a thing is man, that thus forgets the end of his creation, and each hour strikes at the glory of his Maker thus. What brazen visage or black iron soul hath strength to justify so godless deeds? He that is most infamous to tyranny, the man whose jaws burn most with the thirst of blood, what colours or thin cobweb can he weave to cover so abhorred iniquities? If then there be no shadow, no pretext to vade their loathed bodies, what should make men so enamoured on this strumpet war, to dote upon her form, when in herself she's made of nothing but infectious plagues? Witness the present chaos of our scene, where every street is chained with links of spoil. Here proud ambition rides, there fury flies, here horror, and there ruthless murder stalks, led on by ruin, and in steel and fire, that now on tops of houses, now in vaults, now in the sacred temples, here and there runs wild.
And exit Chrisoganus, alarums in several places that break off thus. After a retreat is sounded, the music plays and poverty enters, but we'll come to that because that's Act 6. Okay, there's a lot of stuff going on here. We got a split scene action. I mean, you can imagine today you'll have the lighting design going flick, 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 flick. You're maybe even taking your next cue from dialogue that your character can't hear, and trust me, that is a total headache. And keeping those scenes going. And then, is that bit when the soldiers come on a bit? Is that more meta? Or that literally the soldiers come on and it's like all you actors on the stage, i.e., anyone who is on the stage who is playing in plays that there's a real war outside coming in, and it's like the Spaniards are come, and it's like the ultimate terror fantasy thing of the Elizabethan age. Am I overthinking that? I'm not sure how meta that is trying to be, because at that point there are no actors on stage. There are actors on stage playing characters but there aren't actors within the play on stage. So it's not like they're breaking up a play. They're breaking up the play. So while the soldiers are supposed to be real people coming in, breaking into the play world. Again, might be overthinking that. It's just the logic of that action, because they come in and say, now we are the sharers, you are the hired men, etc. I'll go around the room. Alan, then Lynn, then Cheynne.
Yeah, well, I think from the stage direction, the actors in the company who we've met before are now conscripts. And the soldier speech there, the temptation to actually get into sort of caricature Sergeant Major. You horrible little lot. You couldn't march to save your lives.
Yes, you're right, because they do bring out the players amongst them, so the players do enter on stage. So
I mean, you could see, real cliched character doing that one.
When you look at the enemy, think you are Tamburlaine. That's the logic, isn't it? Yeah. Always nice to get a Tamburlaine reference in. 25-year-old reference by this point. Is it 25? 15. Lynn.
Yeah, I don't know. Until the mention of the Spanish, I thought this was more like Civil War. So I'm not sure what's going on.
War's war.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah.
Cheynne.
When Chrisoganus, when he says she says something interesting, she says, "What a thing is man," and I'm wondering if that's an expression during that time, or is this sort of like a reference to Quack?
I couldn't possibly comment on such a thing. That's entirely outside of our scope, and fine. This is a play that has quite a few quotes all over the place. So maybe. Who knows? Rachael, kind of thing we put in the chat there.
I was gonna say the War and Peace and those guys now are reminding me a lot of I forget the name of the play, but we had history, comedy, and tragedy all talking to each other and taking different turns at the play. And so maybe this is supposed to be a serious part of the play, and we're supposed to know that it's meant to be serious now, as opposed to before, which was very peaceful and comedic. You know, and is this the one where they were making all those jokes about pastorals and nocturnals and infernals?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and because there is a really serious, question being asked at points here, of going, what do people do during time of war? What do businesses do during? How do you keep your business going? With supply chains, can you? Is it safe to be out on the streets? Do you keep yourself open as a target, or do you just hunker down and hope that you can come out the other side? Again, which is a very real world issue. How do you keep yourself alive during if you're not a soldier out on the field? If you're just staying at home and just trying to live your life, how do you get on with it, Lois?
Yeah, and the players, at the end of the previous scene, we've seen them all in a panic because, the thing about press money is if you take it, you are in fact enrolled in the army. And I think one of them did take it and the other one managed to turn it down, but it doesn't really matter. They're going to be grabbed into the army anyway. And they all run off at the end of the earlier scene, and they've clearly all been captured and brought back and in fact looted, I think, by the soldiers. So this is quite we've seen them go through various stages of their particular cycle, and this is the absolute bottom of it, I think.
Yeah, and it's going for spectacle. We have this, everybody's on stage, everybody's fighting this massive scene of sack, havoc, burn, tear, and then everyone scatters and we're left with Chrisoganus, who, we have to, during this act at least, Chrisoganus has to be likeable because he is, as Elizabeth said earlier, he's tying this act together. He's very much chorus-like now and just sort of sauntering around to sort of tie the themes together because and I think actually in this act he's actually functions very nicely, whereas I think when we first meet him he's a very different figure. I certainly found in Act 1 he was presumably deliberately tedious, whereas here he's actually reasonably cogent. Rachael.
Does England and Spain ever actually fight a battle, or is it just a lot of tension over a long period between the two countries?
Lots of boaty action, but mostly.
Spanish Armada?
Yeah. And also just a lot of raiding. It becomes a general English pastime to raid Spanish ships and take the silver and gold. Yeah, that's basically our navy. It's just a lot of officially mandated piracy.
They were at war officially.
Yeah,
because these playwrights presumably did not know this, but when Queen Elizabeth died and James took over, one of the first things he did, styling himself a Rex Pacificus, was negotiate a peace with Spain, because the war was like going nowhere. It was like a permanent stalemate. So, so yes, they were, how battly it was, maybe not very, but they were officially at war.
Yeah, and there was more than one armada, and there were more than one, official panics, and England's at war with, or is involved in proxy wars all over the place as well. So, they've definitely got troops or soldiers about, people coming back quite maimed from, adventures in Ireland and things. It's not a good time, actually, in many ways. But very soon, it's immediately, and the Spanish are all our friends again. Within a few years, it's like that.
A case of with like Britain, Spain, and France is when are they not in conflict for half a millennia, rather than when are they in conflict?
Yeah.
Cheynne.
I guess I just wanted to mention that even though it's not specifically a named war, I would say that during this time that Britain or England is always at war because they're sort of ramping up their whole colonial exploits, right? They're going into other places and battling out with other countries to for trade routes and for territory and things like that.
Yes, it's now starting to get much more complicated, and we really are starting to lay the both the intellectual as well as the actual physical apparatus of what will become colonial and imperial ambitions. It's still very fragmentary at this stage, but it's certainly in terms of the intellectual framework is really starting to be built now, as well as the various connections. It will get more complicated as we go further into the 17th century, which this play technically we are in. We're dancing on that borderline now of the early 1600s. Anyway, let's do Act 6. Let's find out where war presumably is done with, because what does war lead to? Poverty! Ooh. Yay! Act 6, Scene 1. Enter poverty, famine, sickness, bondage, and sluttishness.
Reign, poverty, in spite of tragic war and triumph over glittering vanity. Through want be never void of bitter woes, yet slow pace remedy. True patience shows. See worldling worlds of virtue lined within, though sinners all yet least replete with sin. I scorn a scoffing fool about my throne, an artless idiot that Aesop's daw. Plumes, fair feathered birds, no poverty, will dignify her chair with deep divines. Philosophers and scholars feast with me, as well as martialess in misery. First, change the hour from 5 to fatal 6, then ring forth nails of heavy discontent, with sighs and groans whilst I have government.
In famine needs must follow poverty. My bones lie open, like a withered tree, by storms disbarked of her defending skin. So near the heart the weather beats within.
Oh, end thy age, that we may end our days. Once objects, now all abjects to the world. For after feeble sickness, death ensues, and endeth grief, that happy joy renews.
Then bondage shall unbolt those cruel bars that thralls fair honor in obscure reproach, and savage-like yokes up humanity to bind in change true-born civility.
Though sluttishness be loath to herself, penurious time must be obscene and base. Who hates the rich must dwell with poverty, since rule in anything is sovereignty.
Were poverty a word more miserable than man's austere invention could propound, yet is poor honesty rich honor's ground, whose eyes unveiled like the unhooded hawk look straight on high and in the end aspire to feel the warmth of the prince's holy fire. Yet honor, wealth, lands, and who wins the prize? Obtains but vanity of vanities. Come follow me, my never failing friend.
And they exit all. Let's see what poverty does to everybody else. Act 6, Scene 2. Enter Mavorius and Philarchus at several doors.
The broils of war wherein I gloried more than Priam's Hector, who by burning walls was trailed along dread victory's deep fall. So from these gates myself in mean disgrace am banished forth, pinched through with poverty. Who tells us all 'tis true that she hath said, poor flies will tickle lions being dead.
The thirst of honour called me to the wars, where I have drunk a health, too deep a draught. My full-mouthed bags may now be filled with air, the devil and ambition taught it me.
Is that Philarchus that complains? 'Tis so.
See how Mavorius turns away his face, to seek to friends, 'tis holden for her disgrace.
Time was, I could have dined amongst my friends, now stands at every door a jack and apes, and tells me 'tis too late, his lord hath dined.
This miserable world would make one mad. I stepped unto a vintner at the bar, and offered him my rapier for a pawn. The saucy slave took it in such a scorn, and flung it in the streets, replying thus, mere want brings weapons out of use with us.
See poor Philarchus pouring out his plaints to unrelenting walls, relentless men.
Are wounds rewards for soldiers in the field? What, sell our lands? Are these the fruits of war? Then die, Philarchus, let not shame survive, thy fainting honour, dead and yet alive.
Here come our wives, how wretchedly they look.
Enter Perpetuana and Bellula.
My jewels pawned, my rings are gone to rack, The greedy usurer hath gotten all.
I am prey to wretched poverty. Ill-featured famine will devour us up, whose wrinkled face is like pale death's aspect.
Behold, my wife, like winter's paramour, robed and bereaved of nuptial ornaments. Hide thee, Philarchus, lower than the grave. The earth will cover, though it cannot save.
If men lament whose wanted iron hearts were harder than the armour they have worn, and wail the agent of a woman's voice, what shall weak women and poor ladies do? Fall to those tears that we were born unto.
And exeunt the ladies.
Could I but learn with Croesus to endure the failing sickness of sad poverty, who lost a rich commanding empire, patience would prove a tutor to my griefs.
Thou wants a Solon to consort with thee. To prove affliction is the perfect way that leads to Jove's tribunal dignity. Ill hast thou governed thy prosperity, that canst not smile in mere adversity. Look upon me, the poorest slave in show that ever fortune buried in mishap, yet this is nature's richest jewel house, and teacheth me to weep at all your wants.
Why, thou art far more wretcheder than we. How canst thou teach us then tranquillity?
Seest thou this poor and naked bosom here? Dost thou behold this scorned uncovered head? When thou wast rich and peerless in thy pride, content did never harbour in thy breast, nor e'er bad love her residence in thee. I mean the love of perfect happiness. But skilless grudging from a haughty spirit did blind thy senses with slender merit, whilst I, poor man, not subject to such thought, gave entertain to those sweet blessed babes, which sapience brought from wisdom's holy breast, and thought me rich to have their company. But nursing them in peace, I shunned all sloth, nor yet did plenty make me prodigal. Pride I abhorred, and termed the beggar's shield, nor ever did base envy touch my heart, yet always loved to bear, as Solon said, a turtle's eye within an aspic's head. Nor could the rattling fury of fierce war astonish me more than the midnight clock, the trumpeter to contemplation. For poverty, I shake her by the hand, as welcome lady to this woeful land.
How might we tread the paths to happy ends, since foes to learning are not virtue's friends?
First, entertain submission in your souls, to frame true concord in one unity. Behold the fair proportion of man, whom heavens have created so complete. Yet, if the arm make war against the head, or that the heart rebel against the brain, this elemental body thus compact is but a scattered chaos of revenge. Your laws appointed to be positive, by war confounded, must be brought again, for law is that which love and peace maintain.
Thou son of knowledge, richer than a man, we censure thy advice as oracles.
Follow, and I'll instruct you what I can.
We followed beasts before, but now a man.
And they exit. Act 6, Scene 3. Enter Fourcher, Voucher, Lyon-rash, and Velure.
O heavens, powering high price favours forth, like to the honeydew that sweets the leaves. One send us peace, that fairest palm-crowned queen.
Ruin and war, the precedents of wrath that cropped the 50 sons of Hecuba have rid their circuit through this fertile soil and quite transformed it to a wilderness.
Come, let us sit and mourn with sad laments the heavy burdens of our discontents.
Bewail our want, let speaking slack the pain, for words of grief divide the grief in twain.
Our shops sometimes were stuffed with cloth of gold, but war hath emptied them, and spiders build their cobweb tents, weaving foul dusty lawn for poor woe-working poverty to wear.
Oh, woes! Behold our poor distressed wives.
Enter Perpetuana and Filisella.
From poverty to famine, worse and worse.
The scourge of pride and heaven's detested curse.
Where's that excess consumed upon the back?
Sunk down to hell while hunger feels the lack.
Who now will pity us that scorned the poor?
Pity is past when peace is out of door.
Drink thou my tears, and I will drink up thine, for naught but tears is misery's salt wine.
We that have scorned to dress our meat ourselves now would be glad if we had meat to dress.
And if lament were remedy for want, their cates were coarse that in lament were scant.
Comfort, sweet wife, alas, not always so, and good, sometimes, makes end of lingering woe.
My grief is thine,
And mine is most for thee.
my care is thine.
Be mine for thee and me.
And they exit. Act 6, Scene 4. Enter country serving men.
Faith, poverty hath paid my wife on the petticoat.
From these devouring worms, eat men alive, and swallow up whole manners at a bit. The whilst our hungry bodies die for lack, and honest husbandry must go to rack.
Pray, sirs, for peace, that best may please us all. From city's pride the country takes his fall.
'Tis time for plowshares. Now, our turn to bills, cart horses pressed to carry cavaliers, true laboring servants counted soldiers, slaves.
Though famine, hunger, starve, yet heaven saves.
Then
Then
let us pray
to
to
heaven,
heaven all for peace,
for peace.
thence
comes comfort, plenty,
and
and
increase.
increase.
And exeunt the countryman. Oh, if only we had some peace. Remember peace? It was Act 1. Lynn.
Okay, I'm just going to get this out of the way because I'm annoyed. Going back to the beginning of this sequence, poverty enters with famine, disease, enslavement, and sexual promiscuity. One of these things is not like the others.
Oh, no, I don't think it does. It is sexual promiscuity. Sluttishness, I think, is just the lowering of standards due to poverty. It's more to do with, good housekeeping kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think sluttishness ever really is going in that direction. That is a modern transposition issue, I think.
Yeah.
I retract my criticism.
Yes, don't worry. Some old-fashioned MPs have got into trouble with using this term in the modern day and age, and thoroughly deserved it. It did as well. Briony.
I was just going to be silly and say I agree with Lynn that bondage definitely doesn't belong in there.
But you were tied up at the time.
Yes. Rachael, please bring us back on track.
Well, first, Lynn, I've made the exact same mistake. There was something else that I was like, I think the name was just like slut or something. And so, what do you call it? I was going to say this scene, it's kind of brought us, I don't know if necessarily full circle, but what people were talking before about that cyclicality, the fortune's wheel, that these people who begun the play all the way up here, the aristocracy people, they're now very low, they've been brought low, and the actors were brought high, they had higher salaries, and then, I don't remember if they've been brought low again or something, but, just that switching of fortunes and positions, and there was something else in there that I was going to say, but that was it, kind of.
Yeah, and we've got these people, trying to pawn their weapons after war, and they're just they're valueless now. Lois, then Simon, then Elizabeth.
Yeah, there's reference to turning from 5 to 6, which is obviously on the wheel, and I think this must be the idea that when Fortune's wheel has got as low as it can go, it turns and goes upward again. I mean, this cyclical thing is also very much about sudden changes of fortune, which I think is also going to happen if we get peace finally.
Well, everyone's praying for peace, so hopefully that will work. Simon.
Yeah, my part's more kind of general. If we refer back to us saying, especially at the end of yesterday, we weren't really enjoying it so much. And I was scrolling back to try and find an example of something that was like something second rate. And I don't know what you guys think of this, but the thing that really stood out for me was just how kind of poor little section this was when famine, then thin famine needs must follow poverty. Fine. But then my bones lie open like a withered tree by storms disbarked of her defending skin. And I thought that's somebody trying to sound as if they write in the same kind of standards as some of our more illustrious contemporaries. Whereas in reality, for me, that was nice idea, terrible execution. And I think that sums up this play very well.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The issue I have there is I'm not wholly sure at times what the tone and what the playwright is trying to do at times. So it's quite difficult to judge whether sometimes this is a spoof of this kind of text or whether it is wholehearted and whether it's trying to have its cake and eat it. And also there is a great question of if this is multiple authors that we may shift from one style and someone is trying to ape somebody else's style and trying to make that work. And that flows. And in performance, do you really think anyone's going to notice? Elizabeth, then Lynn, and Lois.
Yeah, I think this play really warrants some really innovative staging. I yet to think of how they could put it, how it was put on, and how you could put it on now. I was thinking of the play that we did where there was the man hanging in the basket. He was the women put him in a basket, and they said they'll pull him up into the house, but they don't. They just leave him hanging. And it made me think of that. That's the one. Thank you, Lois. And I was just thinking about levels and like the wheel as well, and the split stage that we had with Voucher and Fourcher. There's a lot going on here in terms of the staging in the script, yet alone how it could be interpreted by a stage designer.
Yeah, I mean, it is asking a lot in terms of, it is a very ambitious script in terms of its dramaturgy. Lynn, then Lois.
So kind of going back and bouncing off of Simon a little bit, the idea that is this play trying to do something and failing, or is it doing something that we're having trouble reading? But because if we go back to the scene where Mavortius and Philarchus are basically kind of philosophically converted by Chrisoganus, it's like, oh, you're right, you were right all along. I found that unpersuasive. I am not. Are we supposed to like Chrisoganus? Good question. He's just so pompous and so cold. It's just like, I don't know. I am not persuaded. His argument doesn't grab me. So that scene doesn't work for me. But is it supposed to not work? Are we supposed to be persuaded by Chrisoganus, or are we supposed to is it kind of ironic on some level? By contrast, later on when we have the merchant and his wife having that exchange about your suffering is my suffering is your suffering. I found that actually very touching. So I just kind of find the play kind of careering back and forth between moments that work for me on a kind of emotive level and scenes that just I can't wait for them to be over.
Well, I think expecting that sort of reaction, reacting to this on an emotional level, I don't think that's what the player is interested in at all. So if it's not doing that, it's because it's not really trying beyond a sense of that world that is doing things. Lois, and then we'll move on.
Two things. One is just that there do seem to be a fair number of the invisible type of typo, which looks like a word but is in fact the wrong word. And I think this does an injustice to some of the script, although clearly it's not a magnificent piece of writing anyway. And the other thing is just that, I don't know, I think there's a style of acting that it needs. I'm not sure if I can really define it, but extremely quick fire, very extreme. I mean, everything people say is the most extreme version of it, but it's very quick and it's over, and then they go on to something else. And the same with conversions. Yeah, yes, now we're converted. We believe you, and with no attempt at making it psychologically credible. I mean, it's just depicting a very rapid fire progression through a whole cycle of history, which in fact seems to me more and more relevant. I think we should put it on tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think what this is doing. This is a very theatrically dynamic work, and in a sense, there's always that danger of trying to interpret it in a sort of more literary way, which is not really what we should probably be doing. I'm sorry, Rachel, we're going to have to move on because we have more text to do. Hold on to the thought; you can throw it in later. Act 6, Scene 5. Enter post haste with his hostess.
Post me no posting, pay me the shot, you live by wit, but we must live by money.
Goody sharp, be not so short. I'll pay you when I give you money.
When you give me money. Go to, I'll bear no longer.
What? And be under 50?
Enter Constable.
Master Constable, ho! These players will not pay for their shot.
Faith, sir, war hath so pinched us we must pawn.
Alas, poor players. Hostess, what comes it to?
The sharers' dinners 6p apiece, the hirelings pence.
What? 6p an egg? And two at an egg?
Faith, famine affords no more.
Fellows, bring out the hamper. Choose somewhat out of the stock.
Enter the players.
What? Will you have this cloak to pawn? What think you it's worth?
Some fewer groats.
The pox is in this age.
Say they all
Yeah.
the players, please.
Here's a brave world,
Brave world, fellows.
You may see what it is to laugh at the audience.
Well, it shall serve for a pawn.
Enter exit hostess.
So, sirs, I must talk with you for tax money, to relieve the poor. Not a penny paid yet.
Sir, at few words, we shared but 15p last week.
But 'tis well known that each maintains his punk, and taverns it with drunken suppers still.
Alas,
There
there
are
are
wives.
wives.
You're not all married.
Who are not are glad to bring such as they can get.
Before I'll give such a precedent, I'll leave playing.
Faith, and I too. I'd rather fall to work.
Fall to work after playing? Impossible.
Sirs, will you hear the truth?
Rachel, you are gut, I believe.
Sir, you may choose.
But you must all choose whether you'll be shipped and set ashore no man knows where, as the Romans did, or pay for maintenance of the poor, and yourselves kept like honest men.
We
choose
choose neither.
Saving your sad tale, will you take a pot or two?
The dearth of malt denies it.
It's a hard world if the constable despise it.
Must we be shipped in earnest, or do you make us sheep in jest? Ecce signum.
Constable, do you know what you do?
Aye, banish idle fellas out the land.
Why, Constable, do you know what you see?
Aye, I see a Madge Howlet, and she sees not me.
Know you are credit with Sir Oliver?
True, but your boasting hath cracked it, I fear.
Faith, I must fall to making fiddle strings again.
And I to curl horsetails to make fools' beards.
I'll boldly fall to ballading again.
Sir, those provisos will not serve the turn. What ho, sailors? Ship away these players.
Enter sailors.
The wind blows fair, and we are ready, sir.
No matter where it blows. Away with them.
It's an ill wind blows a man thus clean out of ballading.
And they exit. So, in a time of reduced circumstances, there's price gouging, food prices are rising, and everyone has to get second jobs, but the second jobs aren't necessarily enough, and it does feel awfully like austerity politics, this. I mean, this is the thing. The themes and the shape of this play are really on point, actually. There is actually so much here that is, it's the fact they're going to get deported for not earning enough money. I mean, don't give people ideas. God, it's bad enough as it is.
I'm glad this stuff doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. So, I mean, that's a bit too on the nose, some of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's all the actors having second jobs that gets me. I mean, I think Simon and I are feeling this one a lot.
I mean, come on.
What's a second job?
It's the one you have before the third and the fourth. And I do love the post haste saying, "I'll go back to ballading." Yes, that's what the world needs. Lois.
And there's a constable saying, you all have all these parties all the time, and you're, living it up, and you're not even married to some of these women. And God, it's so relevant.
Now,
you're going out buying.
DSS.
You say you don't have any. Look at you going out there buying avocado on toast. Watching television in widescreen. How dare you?
Buying a latte.
Yeah. God. Yeah. If you stopped buying coffee, then you'd be able to afford a house.
In 150 years.
Yeah.
But that's beside the point.
Anyway, we need to finish the play. There is one short scene left to go. So, Act 6, Scene 6. Enter Peace, Bacchus, Ceres and Plenty, bearing the cornucopia at the one door. At the other, Poverty with her attendants, who, beholding Peace approach, vanish.
Bondage, one sickness, and bare poverty vanish like clouds before the eastern light. Now peace appears, hence all to endless night. And you, dejected spirits, crushed with want, mount up your minds unto the fairest hope. Need hath nursed peace within your horoscope, the warm reflection of whose cheering beams makes you as rich as bright Pactolus streams. Shine, plenteous bounty, crown the naked world with odorous wreaths of thy abundant sweets. Laborious artisans, now bustle up your drooping spirits with alacrity. Peace gives your toiling sweat a due regard, crowning your labour with a rich reward. Ceres be lavish, Bacchus swell to brim, and all to peace sing a propitious hymn.
And they begin to sing and presently cease. And I don't know if the next two lines are from a song. With laurel shall our altars flame in honour of thy sacred name. Might be just peace dialogue. It might be this song itself. Not sure. Enter Astraea. Ushered by fame, supported by fortitude and religion, followed by virginity and artes.
No more. Be dumb in hushed observance at this sight. Here comes amazement's object, wonder's height. Peace's patroness, heaven's miracle, virtue's honour, earth's admiration, chastity's crown, justice perfection, whose train is unpollute virginity, whose diadem of bright immortal fame is burnished with unvalued respect. Ineffable wonder of remotest lands, still sway thy gracious sceptre, I resign. What I am is by thee, myself am thine.
And Queen Elizabeth, Astraea, mounts unto the throne.
Mount, Empress, whose praise for peace shall mount, whose glory which thy solid virtues won shall honour Europe whilst there shines a sun. Crowned with heaven's inward beauties, world's applause, throned and reposed within the loving fear of thy adoring subjects, live as long as time hath life, and fame a worthy tongue. Still breath our glory, the world's empress, religion's guardian, peace's patroness. Now flourish arts, the queen of peace doth reign, virtue triumph, now she doth sway the stem, who gives to virtue honour's diadem, all sing paeans to her sacred worth, which none but angels' tongues can warble forth. Yet sing, for though we cannot light the sun, yet utmost might hath kind acceptance won.
And there's a closing song. Religion, arts and merchandise. Triumph, triumph. Astraea rules whose gracious eyes. Triumph, triumph. Our vices conquest whose desires. Triumph, triumph. Though whose all to chiefest goods aspires. Then all triumph. Woo, woo. In the end of the play, plenty, pride, envy, war and poverty to enter and resign their several sceptres to peace, sitting in majesty. So yes, we have a personification of Queen Elizabeth there, a usual form of Astraea, crossing over into masque/civic pageantry realms that we have danced around before. And yeah, it sort of closes everything off with peace banishes poverty. Have peace, trade will flourish. People aren't horribly mutilated and out of work, and prices return to normal. And wouldn't that be nice? I'd love to say Eliza in her latter years brought that to the kingdom, but hey, one can hope. Rachael.
I was going to say that this and the other part, but I think it also applies to this now that, we begin with peace and we end with peace, and it's that fortune's wheel and it comes back. But does it really? Once you've taken, it's that like, what do you call it? That, I don't know, proverb or whatever, that the man who steps into the river after he's stepped out, neither the river or the man are the same type thing. So it's gone on this whole journey, and the scene ends with peace, but the actual physical people, does this peace change their states? Like those people who were brought low, do they come high again? Or the people who were shipped off to somewhere else, do they have peace? And really, who does this peace apply to? And also the other element of this piece that how I was saying in the beginning, it's like a comedy, and then it got more serious as we went on. That it's like people saying, when things get back to normal after COVID, does normal after COVID really, is it the same normal that we had? Because it's a completely different, I think, perspective shift. Because before COVID, you don't have anybody thinking that you could have a whole plague, but now that's a thought process. Like there's a more lightheartedness to these characters that in this, if there was some epilogue, they might no longer have, and there might be a sort of maturation culturally that they didn't have prior to that.
Yeah, I think, how you actually end a production of this is really interesting, because I really want to come in and just have someone swing that wheel. And that question of, yes, with the return of peace, all of those people who were in poverty, we don't see them return necessarily, unless that's part of the dumb show. So there's something... now that we've got a sense of the shape of all of this, as a piece of political theatre, this has huge amounts of potential. Especially, and its slight roughness actually makes it sort of more inviting, because especially with all of the player stuff with the poor company, which seems sketched out, it doesn't feel fully there. It feels like there's room for improv, whereas the other stuff, which is much more speechy, it feels like trim some of that back. That this has such potential, because it could be quite cynical, or it could be very it could be different. It's got options, and I like options. Options are nice. Simon.
Although it's ended with some nice stuff in terms of I take absolutely all those points about peace and the philosophy of it. what's the unified hold of this piece? It's almost like halfway through it's become about this, whereas it was never about anything to do with that before. And I really don't know what you would do as a full production, because would you do a fragment and just do the stuff that's the latter half, the stuff we've done today, which has a bit of context, and then forget about the other stuff, which was we gave it too much credit yesterday, thinking it might come back to its original kind of point about scholarliness and learnedness. And I really don't know where it stood, what it was, other than a collection of scenes that have been kind of put together in a really badly baked pineapple upside down cake. You know, I don't care about the end, because I kind of don't really understand how it fits within a unified whole, personally, for me. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Well, the thing is, the important thing is that opening scene, and understanding, you know, and having Fortune's wheel, and seeing that the characters each scene are reacting to what's happening. It's actually thematically, it all holds perfectly well together. It's just we didn't know what was going on when we read the first half of the play. It was only the end of last session we went, oh, this is what this play is doing. And in production and coming back to it, we can start from that position. I mean, that's basically the problem. Is we came in just going, we didn't know what was going on. It's a morality play of sorts. It's a political play of sorts, and it's playing with this Fortune's wheel turning. And so you're absolutely right. The stuff about learning is purely for Act 1. That's all that stuff is playing, right? Because they have peace, and therefore they do that. And in the next scene, their given circumstances change, and it's those reactions. I mean, you're absolutely right. We need to tie together how all the characters function across the journey, but they are there to react to the changing circumstances. And I think it's that instability. It's about how the world keeps changing around you, and you can't be certain where your feet are going to be pressed. You know, by the end of the play, everyone's a bit screwed. They might be back on their feet again, but actually the play doesn't tell us that, and that's really quite unsettling. And I quite like that. That gives us potential options, and also just the pace. It's so short, really, and I think again with some cuts and some changes, it barely hit 90 minutes. Actually, I think this is something without an interval that just sort of goes, and could be even shorter. And again, that gives it an energy. And it's been a long time since we've done a morality play, and sort of recognising that form, though it's much closer to what we might think of as political theatre today than a morality play is, because morality plays often don't do that. And it's much more questioning and confused. And yes, it is untidy. It is deeply untidy, but it feels theatrical because it's untidy. And I like that. Alan?
I was just thinking, actually, following up on your political theatre reference, this would pair quite nicely with Jack Straw.
Yeah, there are similarities.
In some ways. Yeah. You know, there are some resonances there. Okay, coming specifically out of that, the four mechanicals and the forward the revolution bit. And for those from the right culture and the right generation, you know, also Wolfie Smith and the People's Army of Camden, or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, I think there are definite questions. You know, what does one do with Chrisoganus? But I think we should sort of almost come back to Chrisoganus again from first principles, because again, we weren't quite sure what he was doing at the beginning, because we were thinking he seems to be there to be. I certainly saw him as a comic figure, but actually he doesn't seem to be anymore, and that may mean, you know, we have to cut more of him because he wasn't landing for a lot of us. I'm going to have to go around for final thoughts. You don't have to have final thoughts, by the way, if you don't have any. But I'll start going around. Lois, any final thoughts?
Well, yeah, quite a lot. I mean, the relevance of it actually hit me quite early on. I mean, peace is a time when you open new universities and you establish a national theater. I mean, it really did feel to me like the 60s. And it's a period when there's a lot of respect for intellectuals and, you know, as indicated by the flourishing of the arts. And then you do move into a period which you could call corrupt, where everybody is primarily concerned with making money. And then in a time of austerity and war, things change and people start thinking again in poverty. I mean, obviously it's not perfect. One of the interesting things would be what you do with the whole big Queen Elizabeth. I mean, you know, her accession was thought of as the return of Astrea, the goddess of justice, to the earth. after Astrea. She was, I think, the last of the gods to leave the earth, wasn't she? And sort of the first to come back in the form of Elizabeth. And exactly what you do with that, I don't know. And whether, you could do it in modern dress with highly stylized costumes that made it obvious who everybody was or what social rank they were or what their job was, and then go back to Elizabethan dress for the appearance of Astrea to make it clear that this is a historically conditioned ending. But I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities. It seems to me potentially very interesting.
Yeah, sort of shifting 60s, 70s, 80s for greed, early noughties for war on terror, through to credit crunch and austerity. You could make it very, very pointed. And I think Simon brought up, the projection and images and stuff to counterpoint with what the text is doing as well, and how that plays. Yeah, it almost reminds me of actually the way the film version of Orlando deals with some of that imagery across time as well, of using images of Elizabeth and the way it sort of links that to the future towards the end. I'm rambling now. Final thoughts around the room. Rachael, any final thoughts?
There's parts of this that I liked. I kind of like the general flow of it and the impression I got of it. I don't know how, I don't know if the execution, if I'm 100% on that and liking it, but I think there's something here, but I don't know if I'm very conflicted on it. I don't know if it's my favorite, and I'm worried that I might forget it relatively quickly compared to some of the other things that we've done. Yeah.
Fair enough. Elizabeth, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Lois when she said that the text was interesting. I felt like the one thing you can't say about this play is that it's boring. There's always something happening, and it's always this different revolving cast of characters, which I liked a lot. I thought that in terms of the script, it really jumped off the page, and you could see it kind of coming to life. And it's definitely more about the spectacle of the thing rather than any sort of like character development or like internal, changes of like personality that kind of are supposed to go on in this text. It's supposed to be sort of mask-like in terms of, or even dumb show-like in terms of its portrayal of events. And I liked it a lot. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Briony, any final thoughts? How are we going to get this on stage?
I'd be interested to see what someone like Lois did with it, but personally, I would not touch it with a barge pole. It does not tickle my pickle or float my boat at all, this one. I don't like to be preached at, and it felt a lot like that all the way through. And I get what you're saying about old Chrissy boy being a chorus kind of element, and it functioned in that way, but he was still preaching at me, and I didn't enjoy it.
Just reminding everyone to just pushing towards the positive side of the angle here of what one would do with it. Just keep reminding you that we're not here for a sorting hat. We're here to find the best options for the text that we have in front of us. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Rachael. I kind of don't know how I feel about this. I would not contest the claim that it has a lot of potential as political theater. But I also think that it's true that probably emotional engagement is not what it's trying to do. And I also feel that trying to do theater without emotional engagement is almost always a bad idea.
No, no. You've got to let people have, the audience. There's an audience for that kind of thing. That's
just kind of my bias and my experience. On the other hand, see, I'm going back and forth here. The fact that it is short and you could do it in 90 minutes without an intermission definitely works in its favor. That you could maintain that sort of emotional neutrality for that long and you wouldn't feel like you were missing something, that you can do an intellectual exercise for an hour and a half. I'm not sure you could do it for 2 hours. So yeah, the sort of lack of humanness, I see as a potential problem, but as a play of ideas, as kind of agitprop theater, it does have potential if you can find the audience for that and the right sort of production angle.
I mean, it's not entirely devoid of, feeling for the characters having colour and life to them. It's just that it is very sketched in that sense. We're not going to feel deeply for them because their circumstances change so quickly. Simon, any final thoughts?
Yeah, just really to jump in on what Lynn said, I completely agree with all of that, because there's an old adage about you need tension, obviously, in relationships, particularly to make that translate to an audience. Same kind of thing for having too low a lighting state for too long, as that makes audiences drown out. And I think you've got to think about how on earth you could make this play with an audience. And I think your point about the visual media, you would, I think, need to think extra hard about manufacturing moments of tension and communicative devices to engage an audience, because it's got a tinge of the Ubu plays for me in that, because it's so at least 75% of the audience will just be like that. So I think with stuff like that, when the material doesn't necessarily sing in terms of relationship and tension and draw people in that way on a human level, as Lynn said, I think you then have to work extra hard at device, and that's a difficult one to do.
Cheynne, any final thoughts?
Yeah,
you've only come here for one session, so you're leaping in.
Yeah, it took me a little bit to kind of understand what was going on, but I thought it was a pretty well-crafted play. And I think anytime you take any type of literature from hundreds of years ago and you can apply some of its some of the themes and things like that to today, it's always interesting to see that there's a connection and not much really has changed.
Alan, any final thoughts?
Not an awful lot to add. And I must admit that I didn't see any major areas in need of cutting. There may be some salami cuts to chop down some of Chrisoganus, but most of it just seemed to work, and I think it would need an ensemble who were really on top of their game just to get the pace right, because I think some of the issues that we've struggled with have been where we've actually been trying to analyse what's going on, and I think the thing is, if performed at speed, the discontinuities and absurdities would just disappear, because by the time you thought about them, you're three scenes further on.
Yeah, I mean, and it has the advantage in terms of which can be a disadvantage of the scenes are very schematic. We go from one group to the next group, and not always exactly in the same order, but it's broadly speaking, once you've got through the first act or so, you do know where it's going in general shape. But it does break it up, and it then moves in a slightly. It does each act in slightly different ways. Each act is not exactly the same length, so you're not sitting there necessarily counting in the way that sometimes happens when you have choruses between acts, and you sort of end there with a stopwatch going. And now we have this act. So yeah, it's I think everyone's absolutely right. It's going to take a huge amount of work. I mean, this is a big show. Even if it's a relatively small cast, it's a big show because it needs that visual. It needs to be slick. And I think there's a lot of room for actually improvisation and play within some of those scenes. All of the player stuff, which I think is the stuff the audience is going to like the most. They're going to like the actors. Is the stuff where additional jokes is going to sneak in and additional business is going to sneak in, and that might stretch that material. But then some of the longer speech stuff, I feel, salami cuts, trims, we've got to that point. We can see how that all goes. So that's it for now. Lots of options. Brain is whirring. I like it when the brain is whirring. Nothing more boring than a play that turns up and just says, just say the words in the right order. I mean, what's to discuss? So dumb. So all that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Pox upon this linguist.